should she also be, in your opinion, supporting a mandatory gun buyback program?
The reason why he doesn't want to answer the question is because he understands the implications if he answers the question. Because a buyback program is a gun confiscation.
Listen, we're not going to be able to get where we need to go without action in Congress. We've got to pass some laws to deal with this. Now, I was heartened by the fact that 2 years ago we finally did a gun safety law, the Safer Communities Act, and it was the first gun safety law we passed in 30 years. 30 years. And it was modest, but it did save lives. But clearly, in the wake of what happened just the other day in Winder, Georgia, it's not enough. And the least we can do is move forward on the bipartisan spaces where ordinary people agree. Clearly, there's a disconnect between what the people, the American people, want and what they're able to get out of their government. Again, 87% of Americans believe in background checks. And yet I hear politicians say that it's not guns who kill people, it's people who kill people. And yet we don't even want to know who those people are. We won't even support.
Senator, just yes or no, though, should she support the mandatory buyback program? Just a yes or no.
Listen, look, as a pastor, I've done buyback programs. You can pick this issue or that issue. But I think that, again, there's not one single thing that will make all of this go away.
See, they like to eliminate that little subtle word called mandatory to make you think it's one of those stupid little buyback programs that you see on the side of the road somewhere in a community, and they have a little table and they say, sell us your guns and we'll give you coupons to Kroger's or some shit like that. And then you have this old unsuspecting woman who is a widow and their husband has long been gone, but then he has all of these guns that she doesn't know what to do with. And she has no idea what the values of these guns are. And then she brings them to these stupid buyback programs. And then they take the gun and they give her a coupon to go skating or some shit like that. And then from there, somebody quietly goes over and takes that same gun and then sells it for its actual worth, which is probably like $10,000, $15,000. And then they pocket the money. But we're not going to talk about that, though. But anyway, he doesn't want to talk about this because he understands that we in the gun community have exposed this whole buyback scheme for what it is. It is a gun confiscation. I did an entire video breaking down her literally saying it, that she supports a mandatory buyback. And you have to pay attention to the language that they use because they're very good with language. Very, very good with language. So, and they're very subtle and slight with it. See, there's buyback and then there's mandatory buyback. A buyback is, hey, we'll give you these stupid coupons if you sell us your guns. You can do it or you cannot do it, which is stupid, but I mean, fine. If you want to be dumb and do that, do that. But then there's mandatory buyback, which says you don't have a choice. We're calling it a buyback, but it's mandatory. So you don't have a choice. You have to bring us your gun and you have to sell us your gun for pennies on the dollar. That's not a buyback. That is a confiscation. Just because you don't go door to door to do it doesn't mean it's that it's not a confiscation. All it says is if you don't do this, there are going to be consequences for it. And no, there is no disconnect in the community with respect to these gun laws. The reason you can't get them passed is because nobody supports them. They don't support them. And this whole idea that we need background checks, we have background checks. And if you go to a gun store and you buy a gun, you have to have a background check. What they're talking about is universal background checks. And that's another sleight of hand that they like to use. With universal background checks, all universal background checks is another way to implement a national gun registry that they can inevitably utilize to confiscate. Every registry that has ever been established inevitably ends up in a gun confiscation. They've done it for ages across the world. And so now what they're trying to do is create this idea of, oh, no, we just need background checks. We have background checks. What you want to do is you want to create a universal background check, which basically encapsulates every single gun that every single person has. And then inevitably you can use that information to confiscate the firearms because you can't enforce a universal background check without having a national registry. Because if a cop comes to somebody and says, did you get a background check for that gun? And I say no, if there's no national database to check it against, you can't tell me I didn't get a background check. So that's why he doesn't want to answer the question, because he knows that we know, and we've been informing people, and now they know. When you hear mandatory buyback, that is a gun confiscation. Gun confiscation. And that's why he doesn't want to answer the question. So the next time you see one of these anti-gun politicians up there and they ask him this question and they duck and dodge and they don't want to answer the question, I've done these as a pastor. Those aren't the same gun buyback program. Stop it, bro. There are so many people out there in the middle who don't know these things. They don't know their tricks. They don't know all of the underhanded things that they do to get people to give up their rights. And the irony about it is this whole idea that 86% of people agree with background checks. I did an entire video about that as well. And you want to know what happened when I did that video? I got censored. And the reason I got censored is because they had these so-called fact checkers who said, oh, that's not true. 86% of people do support background checks. And I backed up my shit with data and stats, and they still said I was wrong. So those fact checkers aren't exactly fact checkers. And not only did they say I was wrong, they then censored me and then started limiting my content as a result of that on Meta. So there you have it. It's all bullshit. They're going to say you a dream. They're going to, oh, we're going to keep you safe. We just need to pass gun laws. No. They're all communist Marxists. I'm sorry, I had to say it. I've avoided trying to say that, but everything they do in terms of the policies that they try to push are Marxists in general, or they're communists in general, or however, socialists in general, whatever euphemistic word they want to use to describe themselves to not seem extreme. It's the same shit. It's the same shit. And at the end of the day, when I talked about the Second Amendment, they then tried to quash my First Amendment. So if you think they're not going to come for your First Amendment, when they get done with the Second Amendment, you're fooling yourself. Politicians and tech giants don't want gun content to be recommended to you. And we're all fighting this culture war together. Now, you can help do your part by liking, commenting, subscribing to the channel, but most importantly, sharing this video with at least one person. Together, we can stop the suppression of our 2A rights. And don't forget to click the link in the description section of this video for the products that I mentioned in this video.